there's definitely this misconception around the fact that, oh, because the majority or half the team on the half the athletes on a British team are black, so you're not likely to experience racism. But I always ask people, what is that based on? How do you
Mm.
know this? Are you asking the black athletes? And if you are, how many are you asking? Because I know so many athletes who I competed with over the course of, from start to finish of my career, and you can see it, they definitely experience it, and it's not someone outrightly calling you the N-word. It's never that. It is always those little microaggressions.
So welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I always look forward to our conversations. I've definitely been looking forward to this one. The last time we spoke was literally this time last year. It was April of 2022. And then that was about two months or so before your book was going to be released.
Yeah.
So it's been almost a year then since the book's been out. How's that year been?
Oh, it's been a lot. It's been amazing, to be honest. The reception from family, friends, from loved ones, from sports fans, whether you're in follow the sport, track and field, whether you don't, it's just been, it's been amazing. I'm just very blessed, very thankful. Loads of opportunities that will come off the back of writing the book as well, which has been great. And it's been a massive eye opener, but mostly it's been great to just tell my story in my own words and help other people as well who may be going through similar situations.
And is that something that you found, like, since, opening up and talking about the things that you experience as an athlete in all sides and in all different ways, the exciting stuff, but also some really difficult and tricky stuff as well. Have you found that people have reached out to you and found that connection? Yeah,
I would say so. A lot of messages from people when the book was released, random people, not necessarily just people who I knew or who've been, who I was on teams with or followed my career. It's the most random people who've just so happened to just see my book, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I read your book in like 24 hours or something crazy like that. And they were just, like you said, they were gripped from just reading it from start to finish. So it's very, very nice moments. They've gone through similar situations, abuse, sexual assault, identity, understanding your identity, where you're really from, all of those things. And there was definitely a lot of those topics and a lot of those things that, aren't really spoken about on a day-to-day basis. I think they are now, but I think it's very, very much prevalent when it's someone who is either you can relate to it because they're in the public eye, or someone who you're fond of who's speaking publicly about it. So the response has been really good, and I've been able to help people as well, which is what I really wanted to do.
Yeah, and I must say as well, like, from my perspective, the book, so beautifully written. It was so easy to read, which I must say as well. So if anyone out there wants an easy book, when I say easy to read, sorry, I mean that actually just it flows so well. So it was actually difficult for me to put it down because it's like, oh, into another chapter, go on, then I read this chapter, and it was like chapter. And I did it in 2 days, and I honestly don't think I've ever read a book in 2 days.
Really?
But it was just honestly, it was. I felt like I was there. Like I felt like I was taken on that journey with you. So it was that described in such a way you really felt the way I described it was quite immersed into the book as well. But I think the other thing that I would say is that as a black woman living in the UK, it felt a lot more relatable, because oftentimes when I read black women's stories, it's black women in the US. And so actually reading your story as a black woman growing up, okay, albeit different cities, but in Liverpool, to hear about your sort of that those two cultures that you embody, really, that you're a Liverpudlian, but your family are from Nigeria, and you had a really strong sense of Nigerian community at home, but also within Liverpool as well, which sounds really lovely. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that. What is it like? You know, because I think it is quite a unique. Everyone's going to have their own unique experience of that. But what is it like for you, Anyika? Like, what was that like for you having those two different cultures that were blending together?
To be honest, when I was young, I didn't really understand it that much. It was, you navigate in two worlds because you've
Mm.
got your outside environment, which is the normal English Scouse culture, and then you've got the Nigerian culture, which was always embedded into the family home. So it
Yeah.
was the, you know, eating jollof rice and chicken and going to church on a Sunday and speaking to family members back home in the village and looking at the cloth that we have, our family colors, cultural cloth, and seeing going meeting up with family members that there's a massive Igbo community in Liverpool. And what I really enjoyed about writing this book was just going through so much research. Um, so my dad passed away, but I was able to find out information about what was it like from the elders' perspective. So those who came into Liverpool around the same time as my dad did, or came into the UK around the same time, what was life like then compared to now? And even so much I discovered about my dad I didn't know, because he had a life before he had us.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I I just navigated it the best I could. One thing I will always say is I think now I'm an adult, and I think one thing I really enjoy is the fact that I'm so proud to be from Liverpool, because I've literally traveled the world like 10 times over. And I know everyone says, oh, there's no place like home, and I get that. But the way Liverpool is as a city, like, we really do back ourselves, especially with the conversations that I had now. It's like, not to make it political, but Liverpool's it's a very red city. So
Hmm.
very working class, very Labour. You definitely get an emphasis of community. We help our own. And I hope the readers can recognize that, in the sense of we talk about like a lot to do with like solidarity. Why can't I talk?
Solidarity.
There you go,
Is that it?
that word.
Yeah.
So when it comes to big events that have happened, tragic events that have happened in the city,
Yeah.
like the Hillsborough disaster back in the late 80s, James Bulger being murdered, Anthony Walker being killed, even most recently, Olivia, Pratt, the young girl who was murdered.
The 9-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah, the 9-year-old girl who was killed um, by that, the killer who got has to serve a long term in prison. All of that, like, when I hear, like, when I see the neighbors talk about it, or you hear people in the community, it's all about like looking out for our own. And I've never really felt that anywhere. And I've lived in a lot of places, but Liverpool is just a different vibe. It really is.
Yeah.
And we get Eurovision next month as well, which
I know, amazing.
so people who are coming to Liverpool will absolutely have a ball.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I mean, I'm embarrassed to say I'm a Liverpool supporter, and I've never been to Liverpool, so you could question what I'm
I
doing
thought you
supporting
were going to
Liverpool.
say
But
you're embarrassed to be a Liverpool fan. I was going to say I know
no,
it's bad, but it's not that bad. But yes,
it's not that
thank you.
well.
Welcome. Come,
Yeah,
welcome.
I cannot wait to visit. But you're saying that because I did think that as I was reading through the book, I was thinking, gosh, a lot of things have happened in Liverpool. A lot of things happen all over the world. But I was kind of
Yeah,
reading what you experienced growing up. And we're roughly the same age. I'm a bit older than you, but we're roughly around the same age. And so I remember those stories that you mentioned, the James Bulger case. I remember it so clearly when that case, broke in the news.
yeah,
But I remember in the book, the way you described it, and that solidarity, that's the word, solidarity was that, all the kids were scared, and
we
parents were
were.
afraid, and rightly so. And
Yeah,
you walking arm in arm with your friends, not for friendship, but for security.
yeah, yeah. It very much felt like that. I had no idea how much of an impact it made on the city until probably a few years later. But I remember, because my mum always used to take us to shopping every Saturday, and we were just me and my siblings, we were absolutely treacherous. We would go out with her, and we would just get lost in the shops. and we'd be like, "Mommy, can we get this?" or "Mommy, can we get that?" No, we just have tantrums every so often. I tried not to because she just ends up just not just kicking off. And she didn't want us to cause embarrassment to her in the shop.
Yeah.
So, but I remember that time she always was like, "Don't go too far, like stay close by," all of those places, because where James Bulger's mom and the family used to shop was quite close to where we used to shop as well. So we used to go there every so often. I didn't know this, but my mom had a variation of different places she used to go, and that was one of them. So yeah, my mom, along with every other parent in the city, was just absolutely terrified. Like, is my child going to be next? So, and there's always that whole stranger danger thing that we had when we were a kid, and there was loads of emphasis around that with the police coming into schools and care workers and all of that, and teachers. Yeah, so yeah, it was not a great experience to have, but like I said, there's been a lot of care has come out of all these tragic events that have happened within the city.
Yeah, yeah. It was really interesting to read the massive difference actually between the two parts of Liverpool that you lived in. So I want to say Wavertree and now
Yes.
what's the second one called?
Oh, Dingle.
Dingle.
Yeah, Dingle.
How far away were these two from each other? Because I understood that you took a bus from one to the other at some point. So how far away from each other were they?
Do you know what? They're not that far. In the car, probably about 10 minutes. Maybe 10, 15 minutes drive. Maybe about 20 minutes on the bus. I think, is there a direct bus from Wavertree to Dingle? There might be. Yeah, there is actually. There is. So yeah, maybe about, well, it depends what side of Wavertree, because Wavertree's quite big. But let's say from the track, Wavertree Athletic Centre to Dingle, I think it was a 204, 202 that used to go there. And that would probably be about half an hour. So that was like top of like Wavertree, and then you're going through the rest of South Liverpool, and then you end up in Dingle. So not that far, but it's just crazy just what we actually endured around about that time. It was just a really, really rough experience just living in Dingle at that time. So yeah.
Yeah, and then thank goodness that you were able then to go back to Wavertree, back to somewhere that was familiar and more of that community feel around it.
Yeah.
I guess I also think about your parents as well, because they both came over from Nigeria. I think it was that your dad went into Glasgow first of all.
Yeah, he first landed in Scotland, and then he eventually ended up in Liverpool.
And then your mum, was Liverpool the first place that she came into?
Yeah, unfortunately for them. Joking. Yeah. Because you know what it is, back then, all the elders knew, or all the people back home, all they ever knew of England was London, London, London. That was the only place. So when people used to come into Liverpool, used to come into the UK either by plane or by ships, because people used to get on ships. It used to take a while, but people used to get on ships and travel to the UK, and it was literally always London. So when my mom, I think when she told my grandma, her mom, that she's going to be in Liverpool, my grandma knew that she'd be safe because my dad would take care of her, but she was like, I don't know any about Liverpool. But then when like I said at the beginning, just all the elders came from Nigeria, Igbo culture, Igbo tribe rather. They all knew each other, someone who knows someone. So my grandma knew that my mum was going to be safe. But yeah, they ended up in Liverpool and just never left. Yeah.
I think one of the, when I think about values and what we learn from our parents, your parents seem to have a very, I don't know how to describe it, but they seemed that they were so resilient and very just sort of focused on doing well and giving a good life to you and for them and for you and your siblings and being part of that community, and almost had, it's almost like that, because it was interesting to hear. So one of the two stories that come to mind is one, I think your dad came to pick you up from training, and you got pulled over in the car, and the policeman basically just racially profiled him, and you gave that policeman what for?
Me, my good
despite being
mouth.
told to stay. But just that difference in your responses, though, because your dad was kind of like, just get through this, get back in the car. Annika, don't come out the car. Annika was like, no, not having this. Just that difference in responses to the same environment, I guess.
Yeah, it was. I think my dad had always just, I wasn't aware at that point, like how often my dad would get stopped by the police. He did allude that there'd been a few times, but you kind of get a sense of that anyway growing up in Liverpool, because just the way like the police have just treated black people in general. And then obviously we had the Toxteth riots back in the early 80s. So the relationship between the black community and the police wasn't always great. So yeah, I was just like a gobby teenager, to be honest, at that moment. And it was more to do with the fact that it literally didn't make any sense to me. My dad doesn't drink. If he does, he has, I'm telling you, one drink a year. Like, if you live in an African household and there's just a drinks cabinet, I'm telling you, the drinks cabinet
Collecting
will
dust.
stay. Yes, because no one drinks. We were like kids, teenagers. What we drinking alcohol? Well, my older siblings may have had like one sip or two, but me, I wasn't touching none of that. It was more to do with like for show or for guests or just having it there. So my dad didn't drink. So when the police officer was asking him all these questions, I was like, what is this? Why are you pulling over my father? We've got places to go. I literally had studying to do. We were like less than a mile away from the house. And it was like, when I look back, I always think, the police officer must have been tailing my dad. So my dad waited outside work, because that's where he picked me up. He was, because the hotel, the Motels Hotel where I worked, it was in the city centre, like right in the city centre. So my dad waited for me right outside the hotel, jumped into the car, and he just must not have noticed the police officer was there. So yeah, and it just didn't make any sense. And although I got a good telling off, I in my mind I was just like, no, like you can't sit there and comply, because if it's not you, it's only going to be someone else. If I wasn't there, the police officer probably may have treated him far worse. Some of them didn't care if you got a child in the car or not, but it was only because, I think he had a female police officer with him, and she was like, like just back off to her colleague, like, let's just go. And it made me think, well, clearly he has a habit. I don't know about her, the female police officer, but the male police officer, to me, he felt like he had a habit of pulling over black people in cars, asking, is this your vehicle? Where's your license? How long have you owned this car? Have you been drinking? Where have you been tonight? And I'm just like, yeah, you need to chill, mate. Just chill. So yeah, from then I was just not standing for it. And that's pretty much how it was until I was in London. And then I just, once I moved to London, during my career, I got pulled over so many times. So many times. It was just constant. It just became such a massive inconvenience, if anything. Because my dad always told me, when the police officer, if you ever get pulled over by the police, I don't want the police to tell me that, we've got your daughter and she's in a body bag because she didn't comply, so they decided to shoot or beat me or whatever. It was always, just comply, just give them what they want, just be nice. And I never really understood it until I was in that moment several times. Because in the beginning, when I got pulled over by the police in London, I was just like, what are you pulling me over for? Like, what's this? And then when you realise it's like there's levels to it compared to Liverpool, even though it's the same, it's like there's levels to it. But yeah, it didn't make any sense. Like, just pull me over, just let me know what you want so I can just be on my way. I've got a license. I've got no points. The car's fully insured. MOT, road tax. What are we doing? Why have you pulled me over? It's not a routine check. It's not a flash car. So what is this? So yeah. And then the reason why I say it became an inconvenience is because I was on the way to maybe Gatwick or Heathrow Airport on the way to like a championship with the team. So with the GB team, like a world championships or an Olympics or something. And I was on the way to the airport, and I was in a hurry, and I got pulled over. And again, it was the same thing. Where you going? Da, 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 da. The only reason why they let me go, because they didn't believe me initially, the only reason why they let me go is because I was literally in GB kit. Because when you arrive, you have to travel in kit, like either the jacket or the bottoms or whatever. So if they didn't see the suitcase, because I'm just like, go and check the trunk, my GB suitcase is in there, check my ID, Google me if you need to, just let me go so I can go and catch this flight. And I could tell that they felt a tiny bit of remorse, but there was no apology. It was just like, okay, just be careful on the road. And I'm like, why are you wasting my time? Just move, let me just go when I need to go. So yes, from then it wasn't really good experience with the police.
And I think as you were talking there, like, you know, that was you literally getting stopped on your way to a tournament, you know, on the way to go and represent country as well, like the country that's treating you this way. I think the other thing that I realised I was going through the book, because I grew up as a kid watching, you know, athletics. I love sport in general, but particularly loved athletics. I used to love running when I was a kid. And I just saw you all as, you know, complete superstars, athletes. And so now reading this book, I still think you are superstars and, you know, and all the rest of it. But it's the realising that there are two sides to this. It wasn't just rocking up and running some races. There were times in your on funding, times in your off funding, and just all the you know, and then life, you know, just actually being human and what it is to navigate this world on top of everything else and having to run races. I mean, as you sit here now, a few years of, well, how many years of retirement now? This is 3 or 4?
3, maybe 4 years, almost 4 years.
How removed do you feel from that experience of having to sort of juggle all of those things, the sport, life, you know, racism, whether it be overtly, covertly?
Oh, that world was so different. Sometimes when I was going through edit to the book with the editorial team and just reading certain chapters and looking at where my life was, I don't know, let's say when we were reviewing it spring 2022 to how my life was over the last 20 years, it's like it's just changed so much. Like in some parts I don't even recognize Anyika anymore. I don't recognize that Anyika. I don't recognize that life. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm a fraud right now. That's literally what it felt like at times. But then once the book was released, once the book came out, that's when I just thought to myself, yeah, no, like tell your story, tell it exactly how you want it to be told. You know, and like I said, try and find a way to help others. But you know, it's not all doom and gloom. I know some of the parts have been really bad, but there's some funny moments in there. So when I think back to the funny moments, like when former teammates are messaging me saying, oh my gosh, do you remember that? I can't believe you put that in the book. And I'm like, yeah, because it was actually a really funny moment, or it was a nice moment, or it was something that brought me joy at the time. So that's why I decided to include it. And yeah, it's athletics, the sport has just changed so much. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy spectating. I enjoy supporting my teammates. I really do. I know it sounds crazy because, you know, sometimes it feels like the bar is in hell for some people, but I honestly, not an ounce of bitterness in my heart when it came to retiring and watching other people succeed. I watch these people and I'm like, yeah, people, I know what that feels like, whether you finish 4th in a race or whether you finish, you miss out on, you know, fastest loser spot to make the final, or whether you just get knocked out with the heat, or if the baton goes down, like all these emotions and roller coasters that people endure. And I went through that. I can relate to that. So I think I have a level of compassion. I've always had compassion for my teammates anyway, but more so now I'm not in the sport anymore, because sometimes when you're watching interviews of like athletes who pass through the mix zone, or, you know, doing BBC interview and stuff, when they've had a bad performance, you actually don't know what someone's gone through. You actually don't know, like, yeah, what they've endured to even get there, despite them having, you know, a tough performance. So yeah, I don't regret my decision at all. I'm happy with my decision, and the sport moves on, and so have I. I've gone on to bigger and better things, and I'm thankful that I'm literally thriving in each and every one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching your Instagram, and it just sounds, yeah, it seems that you are just doing absolutely amazing things. And one of the lines that I remember from your book, I'm going to paraphrase it 'cause I can't remember exactly what it was, but you sort of talking about your retirement and just looking forward to not having to count your calories in the evening, you know, just having that freedom.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Oh gosh, no,
So
not
much
now.
structure. Yeah.
Yeah, just like I said, just being able to just like eat normally, like eat normal foods. But also I'm a little bit vain because I do miss my track body. And I know I may not get that body back again unless I train super hard. But what I do now is I go to the gym every morning, or at least 4 to 5 times a week. And it's like 5 minutes from my house. And I just, yeah, I get like an hour or an hour and a half to work out in, and I just get it done. Like, I don't have to do a massive, like, heavy workout, but I just have to keep moving. And that's what I enjoy because, yeah, I enjoy keeping fit. I enjoy doing different things. I've taken up tennis recently. I've really enjoyed tennis. I love tennis. I could never play it when I was competing because, you know, injuries and stuff. You're scared to get injured, you know, because there's a lot of lateral movement across the court.
And one-sided,
Yeah. Whereas with your sprinting, you just kind of, whether it's a drill or a movement, everything, you're just moving forward or running forward per se. So yeah, I've enjoyed these new challenges and just spending time with family, friends, making new friends, being able to network, and I've loved it. I've loved every bit of it.
And getting to, I guess, travel where you want to without it being for sport, actually getting to enjoy the places that you travel to.
I'm going on holiday next month and I can't wait.
Amazing. Where are you going?
I cannot wait. It's like, I can't say where in case.
Oh, okay.
No, because the person I'm going with, they may be listening. And
okay, fair. It's a surprise.
Yeah, it's a surprise. So I can't, but it's somewhere exotic and I cannot wait. Because I'm like, ooh, we've never been there before. We need to go. So yes, I'm excited. And like, again, just to plan a holiday this time of year is just like, wow, I can do that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've got other trips planned throughout the year, but I'm really looking forward to that first one.
Nice. And what do you spend most of your time doing these days? So what happens now you're, a few years into your, retirement? How do you feel about the word retirement, actually, by the way, retirement from sport? I know Serena Williams doesn't like it.
I guess everyone deals with it differently because it is like it's like a stage of grief. And I went through that. It is like, especially because, I mean, someone like Serena, she's been in tennis since she was like a baby. So, for someone like me, I've been doing this since I was a young girl. And yeah, I guess everyone has different definitions of it, different terms, different words. I'm more or less happy with retirement. What other words can you use?
So when I was doing my dissertation, transition out of sport was the preferred.
Oh, okay.
Since you transitioned out of sport.
Transitioning, yes, no. Well, so I have transitioned out of sport and I am transitioning into bigger and better things.
Nice.
But in terms of my day-to-day routine, I currently work as a consultant, so people consultants for one of the big four, and I really enjoy it. It's very different from being physically active every day, but it's nice to not have your salary or your wages dictated by your physical performance. Now it's just making sure I do client work, or I'm doing face-to-face analysis, or I'm doing something super exciting. And also because I knew I didn't want that to just be my go-to like job role. I also wanted to do other things as well. So doing the book, as like I said, it's created so many opportunities. It's opened so many doors. So I do a lot of corporate speaking events. I get invited to networking events. People who didn't necessarily know me before are like, oh, we want you to come and talk on this platform be part of this panel, be part of this discussion. And yeah, that's just created so many opportunities for me. And yeah, it's just strengthened how much I believe that the book was, really, really needed in this space. There hasn't been a book like this one for a while. So it wasn't just a case of like, winning various medals and then just rolling off into the sunset. It wasn't trying to stay in the public face, so to speak, but if there's an opportunity that came my way in order for me to do that, then I'm going to take it. So yeah. So a lot of different things, a lot of exciting things. And people have been so receptive. Like they see a lot in me where they're like, oh yeah, we want to bring Anyika in and, let's have a discussion. What do you think about this? And that brings me joy. That brings me so much joy and happiness because people want to see me do good. They want to help me. I learn new things on the go. So yeah, that's been one of the most exciting parts of adulting.
Yeah.
Adulting / transitioning.
Transition into, and I guess the other thing as well is like so you sort of touched on it a little earlier, sort of saying that there are some things you miss, and that the body image, I guess that often takes time. It's only been 3 years since you transitioned out of sport. But how do you feel about that sort of resolving the athletic identity? I don't know if that's even the right word. What do you think happens to the athletic, the Anyika, the athlete? Like, where is she?
Do you know what? I think she's still there in some parts, but she's not dead. So she's not like deceased. But I'm thankful for that Anyika because she's helped to build into the Anyika that, we see in the present. So yeah, despite, all the ups and downs and different challenges and hurdles that I had to overcome, that Anyika, I think when I look back and think back to that, she doesn't leave me because, she endured so many things, so many things. So when I think to myself, oh, I can't do this or I can't do that, I think back to that Anyika and think, she went through so much worse. This is just easier. One thing I do now is I just take a lot more time for myself. So whether it's a lot of self-help, self-care, just taking care of myself, I can afford to now because time is a little bit, they always say time is a luxury, but I have a little bit more of time to do things that I didn't necessarily have before. I really am all about like self-care and just taking good care of myself, even when I've been traveling. So, because I do travel quite a lot. So if it's, an opportunity for me to just like sleep for like a day or two, then and just rest, then I'll do so. I will just do that because, I can't come and die. I literally need to find the time to just take care of myself and whatever that is, whatever that may be for people. I think it's so important. And also we learned to do that during COVID. One thing I will say is I think I didn't understand transitioning out of sport for the first 2 months of COVID because the things I had lined up prior to COVID, everything would just went like flat. So there was a lot of waiting around. So for 2 months, it was a case of me just kind of figuring things out. And, this was the start of writing the book in 2020. Like May 2020 is when May 2020 is when we finally started. So I was understanding things about myself. And, before I was always going to bed early, whereas now during COVID, I could literally, if I wasn't doing a writing session with Jonathan, helping me to ghostwrite the book, I would be watching TV for hours. And if I couldn't sleep, I would be like cooking dumplings at like 3:00 in the morning or cleaning the house because I just couldn't sleep. But that also ties into probably stress because of, everything was heightened in regards to, the things that I was discussing in my book. So that ties into that. But But yeah, that Anyika, she's not dead and buried. She'll always be there. I love that Anyika to bits. I really. It's so weird talking about yourself in the third person. Wow. Okay, let me
But see,
shut up.
it's a different, but no, but it's true because it's the different parts of us, isn't it, that do different things for
Yeah.
us. And I guess that part of you is that the enduring one, the one that can really get things done and maybe pushes it. Because, like I said, I wrote a brief post on Instagram about my review of the book, and I said it is a lazy sort of go-to word for Black women to use the word strong, but it's the only one that. It was well, not the only one that came up with many words, but it was the first one that came to my mind. It was so empowering to read that story. So I was thinking, I mean, you said the word a few times in this conversation, endure. What you were able
Yeah.
to endure and to carry on and to sit here today still with such a positive outlook, like recognizing that really difficult things happen that definitely should never have happened and no one should ever go through. But here you sit today with a lot more freedom and still carrying that strength, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's still there. But now it's a little less restrained. Before I felt like I was not just carrying baggage, but it felt like that baggage had me on a chokehold. It really did. Um, the word strong again, yeah, it definitely it's always attached to Black women, and I hate it. I really do. And I even catch myself using it almost in like a sentence or whatever, and I'm like, no, 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 we don't need to use that word. We can change it. There's different variations of strength, um, just because of the whole word, the connotations around it. So,
Exactly.
um, I don't want to be strong anymore. I want soft life. I really do. I've learned how to have a soft life over the last few years, and I've never had it before. So yeah, it was literally the best timing for everything to just come together when it did.
Yeah. To live in that soft life. I love that. It's a thing now as well that we get to live a soft life because, like you said, yeah, when we get that sort of strong Black woman label, it kind of lets that soft life be off limits. I guess when I think of strength, I guess it's just the vulnerability. The fact that you were able just to be so open in the book and talk about things that you had never spoken about before. And I think that's where I see that strength and that vulnerability. But like you said, I do probably need to find some new way, new ways to
No, no. I
describe
mean,
that.
yeah. Obviously, you can strength, strong. In that context, yes. I think it's more in the like it's when the everyday person says, "Oh my gosh, Black women are so strong," but why should we have to carry that? But in terms of what I've spoken about, yeah, there's a lot of strength tied to that because I have been very open in the conversations and the discussions and things that I have gone through because ultimately that was my life during those different moments. So yeah, like I'm proud of myself and I just hope everyone else is.
I mean, I felt an immense sense of pride, and one of the things I'm doing this year is trying to spend more time reading books by Black women, because not more so because I just spent a lot of my life reading books by white men, just by all the self-help books that I used to read were mostly done by white men, and so actually now reading books by Black women, just feeling so seen in those
Yeah.
words. I think I mentioned to you earlier, like even when we talked about sort of body image stuff, and you mentioned in the book that you looked at Jet from Gladiators, and I thought to myself, oh my god, I used to look at Jet's body from Gladiators and think she was so amazing. I thought, oh my gosh, I thought it was so random that that same Gladiator appeared in your book. So yeah, I think one thing I would encourage Black women out there to do is exactly that. If they haven't done so, I'm a bit late to the party probably, but for those who haven't done, to definitely spend that time to read Black women's stories, because it just helped. It definitely made me feel seen, particularly when we talk about microaggressions. And whilst we're all very different with different experiences, there are unfortunately, a lot of similar experiences that we have had.
Yeah, I definitely think it is. And, just touching on microaggressions, so to speak, I think there's definitely this misconception around the fact that, because the majority or half the team on the half the athletes on a British team are Black, so you're not likely to experience racism. But I always ask people, what is that based on? How do you know this? Are you asking the Black athletes? And if you are, how many are you asking? Because I know so many athletes who I competed with over the course of, from start to finish of my career, and you can see it. They definitely experience it, and it's not someone outrightly calling you the N-word. It's never that. It is always those little microaggressions. And, I wrote about it in the book, and so like Anyika, for example, or the word Annie. So I never used to use the word Annie when I was growing up. No one called me Annie when I was growing up. I was always known as Anyika until I came into athletics. And it was always a case of, well, why can't you pronounce my name? Why can't you pronounce it? And I think it started out as a joke type of thing. And I just kind of went along with it because it's just like, okay, yeah, Annie. And, there was like a running funny joke in my old training group where they used to, not that I am an orphan, but you remember the film Annie? So Orphan Annie, all of that stuff. So there was like a running joke with that, like, yeah, Annie, Annie, Annie. That was always how it was. And Annie, are you okay? The Michael Jackson song, all of that stuff. So yeah, there was all of that, but it was, I think it's only when I look back, I'm thinking, gosh, I really went through suffering when it came to microaggressions, like even commentators not being able to pronounce my name. But you can pronounce Eastern European, Polish, Swedish, Russian. Do you know what I mean? You can pronounce them, but when it comes to someone of African heritage or Indian heritage, it's like what, like crickets. Like, what are we doing? So yeah. And then the difference was stepping into the corporate world. I'm telling you, the difference was when I first started, because there's so many people in the firm that I work for, the first thing that they say is, how do you pronounce your name? And I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, how do you pronounce your name? I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want, I don't need to think I'm not aware of how your name is pronounced. So can you let me know how it's spelled? And I'm like, yeah, it's Anyika. And they're like, okay, cool. Nice to meet you, Anyika. And I'd never had that. Yeah. Everyone asks me now, how do you pronounce it? Some people get it first time. And even if they don't, they're like, oh, sorry, I'd like to apologize. How do you pronounce your name? Was that the right terminology? Is that the right words? And it's so weird. It's definitely night and day compared to what I had. So yeah, what I say now is I always correct people if you don't get my name right. So if they say, like, some people are most likely to say Anyika. I'm like, no, Anyika, it doesn't matter who you are. There was a builder who was doing work in my house the other day, and he was like, oh, yeah, hi, Anyika. It's Anyika. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, sorry about that. I'm like, no, it's fine. Just don't get it wrong again.
Yeah, I've told you. Remember it now. Yeah, but it's so true. I'm exactly the same with my name. I don't have it shortened. People have often tried to call me Kay, and I'm like, no, I'm always Keisha. Unless you're one of 3 people in my life, you might get away with that. But yeah, it's a whole different name otherwise, isn't it? And people don't recognise that. Yeah, just like not taking the time to simply learn your name, which is quite a key part of a person's identity, is such a microaggression, whether they do it intentionally or not. But regardless, if somebody's asking for something, the fact that they see that as important tells you enough about the sort of hierarchy that they have in their mind.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Because I don't know if it's like a white name. I don't know how often white people shorten or abbreviate their names, but it's mad how you can see someone's name and you automatically combust. Like, your brain goes into a sense of uncertainty, loss, fear, anxiety. And I've seen it on so many people's faces countless times. And inside, I do an inward laugh because I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes. So yeah, but if they want to give it a go, I'll just correct them. If not, I'll just like, yeah it's Anyika. I'll save you the trouble. It's Anyika. But I always say to people, like, you guys are lucky that you just call me Anyika. This ain't even my proper name. I've got a proper full government name. So yeah, that's only part of it. So
this is the shortened version.
This is the shortened version. It's not Annie, it's Anyika, but it's also something else as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
unless you're one of my close family members, you won't know what that is. But yeah,
Okay.
Annika, I just go by Annika.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think and it sounds like a lot, like you said, a lot has changed, in sports since you've left. And I think hopefully that your book, I would have thought that your book could have changed a lot of things in sport. I did see a few after your Guardian article, the interview that you had in the Guardian. I saw another article attached to it. I actually didn't read the second article, but it was like, people really saying that, things we need to take note of what Annika's talking about here, and that things really
Right.
do need to change. Are you aware of any changes that have taken place since you wrote your book?
I am aware of the safeguarding within sports, safeguarding especially within British athletics. I know that's been a big thing over the last few years, I would say. But I think because things are being, highlighted in the public, in the press, I don't think they can afford to cover it up anymore, or to brush it under the carpet, or do payoffs to people, to individuals, because that eventually follows you no matter where you go. So yeah, I think there was more of a shock from the federation, because they were like, wait, someone as high profile as you had gone through all of that, and how did we miss that? Why did we miss that? So there were certain questions that needed to be asked. And I was happy to answer the questions that, I had conversations with the CEO at the time and the chairman once the book came out. And, it wasn't just it was a very informal conversation. But it was more to do with, are you okay? Which is the first thing. I wasn't angry. I'm not an angry person. It takes a lot for me to get angry, upset, frustrated, stressed. Yes, I think that's a normal emotion for most of us. But I don't get angry. I wasn't angry at the federation for doing very little during moments of my career. But I just spoke the truth. I wasn't like kicking off or anything. I'm like, no, I'm an adult. Like, but I don't want to hear that, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, that the same thing has happened to another potential Annika, or another whoever. That's not what we want, because kids nowadays, it's different. Like, look what's kids, especially girls. It's it's so easy to get influenced by certain things when you're young, impressionable by certain things, certain people, certain individuals. My situations were bad, but I'm thankful that I say this and I've got to be extremely careful when I do say this, but and it is bad that it's got to this point, but I'm thankful that I wasn't getting abused by any of my coaches, because it is bad. The stories that I've heard, the things that I've seen, the ongoing cases of abuse within the sport, it's crazy. Things that have been historic have happened before me, during my career, happened to someone else. It's crazy. It really, really, really was. So yeah, although the bar is in hell, I would like to think at some point we need to let's bring that bar up to sea level. Let's bring it to land, so everyone is in a position where they feel safe and they can train happily in a safe environment as well.
Absolutely, and not be just used as a commodity. I think that's the thing that gets me. Not got me the most, but one of the things that really gets me is how, again, like how athletes can often just be treated as like they're this commodity, this thing that secures a place, funding, and actually these are humans first, more than anything else, humans that they're dealing with. And I think I've just seen, again, since I've written my dissertation and was looking more into sort of athletes and retirement, just recognizing actually how much mental health issues are there, and just how much people must have endured and just not ever, maybe never had the opportunity to speak out about.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many things that people told me, and I'm like, oh my word, like, you really went through that. And they don't necessarily have a big platform. Some of them did have a big platform, but it was easy enough for them to just cover it up or just compartmentalize it. But at some point, it's going to come to the forefront, which is what it did with me. I couldn't keep certain things to myself anymore. I couldn't keep quiet about certain things, so it was just easy for me to just speak up about it. So It's definitely not easy, but the conversations need to be had in terms of protecting the athletes, whether from abuse, racism. Look what's happening in various sports within safeguarding in gymnastics, and the racist abuse that cricketers have endured, and in rugby and in football. Gosh, football is just ongoing.
No,
It's
football's got a
just,
long way to go.
yeah, massive, massive.
Well,
So
all sport do, but football, I had a reaction to football because it's probably the sport that I watched the most. But that whole thing that's coming out with rugby now, and I'm just like, really,
yeah,
well, I'd be surprised. But but at the same time, of like it's ridiculous that we're still having these conversations today.
yeah, it's nuts. It really is crazy. It really is, and I'm glad that as painful as it may be, it's also important for these athletes to speak up. But I always tell people, because when I've had various conversations with other athletes from various sports and they've gone through similar situations, I'm like, if you've endured something that's been really painful for you as a black person, as a black woman, just as an athlete who's been at the highest level, excuse me, you're under no obligation to speak publicly about it. Do it because you want to do it, because like the reaction that this person's had could be potentially different to how yours have had. Yours may be. If you don't want to speak out about it, then it's fine. If you can continue to live your life however you want to live it. But if you feel like you're going to get peace by speaking out about this, by all means, sing like a canary, like me. But yeah, just make sure you're well supported. I think that's important. And I'm grateful for the support that I've had throughout this whole process, because even before the book got released, because it was scary. I don't remember sleeping that week of publication week. I just never got no sleep, because it was just, it felt like I was back on the start line again.
Yeah. I can only imagine, because even if I do a slight overshare on my Instagram stories, I'm like, ooh, that felt, that was difficult. I don't want to go back and look at. So I can't even imagine what it'd be to really just sit there and, over time and actually put the stories into a book. I can imagine adrenaline must have just been coursing through your body.
Yeah, there was a lot of, I'm not going to lie, there was a lot of fear. I was like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? What are people going to say? And then once you've gone past that point, I'm like, well, there's nothing I can do now. I can't stop the printers. Like, it's going to come out. It is what it is, So, yeah, and I think, I don't know what the equivalent would be. I don't know. It felt like, I don't know. It literally felt like I'd won another Olympic medal. I don't know, maybe getting married, maybe childbirth, I don't know, like constant phone calls, constant messages, a lot of interviews that one day, and, just having the book launch in the evening as well. It just felt like, yeah, it was nice. It was nice that the response was beautiful. It really was, and it has been since then. So, yeah, big up to everyone who's been supporting me since day one.
Amazing. Brilliant. Oh, Anyika, it's been so lovely speaking with you. I mean, there's literally, I wrote so many notes, but at the same time, I was like, do you know what? People just need to read the book. They need to buy the book and read the book if they really want to get into the conversation of what we're speaking about here. I think it's a really important read. I'm so thankful that you endured what you endured, and when I say endured, as into to actually put your story into words, into print. I'm so thankful for you doing that. I know you didn't do it for me, but I'm so thankful for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Honestly, it does mean a lot. I did it for people like you, though, who can read one chapter and think, oh my gosh, she's speaking to me. I did it for other various girls who've gone through the same thing, or guys who may have gone through the same things, or just people in the general public. You don't need to know me to know my story. You don't need to have followed my career. But if you can take a little bit of that, of any chapter in the book, in 69,000 words of what I've written, and relate to it.
How many words it was?
Oh my gosh. I nearly went over the word
69,000.
Oh my, there was so much more we wanted to write. They were like, Anyika, no. That's why the book got delayed. Thank God. It worked out better with the delay.
Yeah.
Like, it got pushed back because it was supposed to be out in January 2022, and then we moved it to summer.
And it came out in June or July, right? Yeah.
June.
And
yeah,
do you know,
June.
as I read it as well, I was like, this could be a film because of the way that where you finished in your career.
Yeah.
It was such a high
Yeah.
in that way. And
Yeah.
so as I was reading it, I was like, do you know what? I'd watch this film.
Would you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, this could totally be a film because it was probably, again, the way it was written, it was so descriptive. And also you had some pictures in there. Thank you. Love pictures.
Thanks.
So it really helped to bring it to life as well. But yeah, couldn't recommend it enough. A brilliant book.
Oh, thank you. And watch this space. It may be in a movie theatre in the near future, possibly.
Ooh.
But yeah, we'll see. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Everyone go and buy the book. It's available in all good bookshops. It's available online. Follow me on socials. If you want to ask any questions, then feel free to DM me.
Thank you. I will link everything into the show notes.